Hello everyone, welcome to Scorcher Toys at Anymoon.com's review of Calibre Wings 172 scale F-14 Tomcat die-cast model. Normally I'll tell you to go out and pick this thing up at Big Bad Toy Store, but today we're looking at the convention exclusive D-type or trainer colors. As it sounds like you could only buy this thing at a convention, only 300 are being produced and they generally cost around $145 depending on which convention you're picking it up at and in which country that convention is in. Unlike previous releases of the F-14 die-cast model, this version is being labeled a Macross release, and that change necessitates a slight change in the story that you'll find on the lid of the box. It's a nice flip-top lid, kind of has a little magnetic component to it, and they've updated the dates and a little bit of the terminology to reflect the Macross universe rather than the Robotech universe. And so for those of you who don't know, there's slight differences between those two. If we ignore the Wonderfest exclusives that were limited to 10 units produced, this is Calibre Wings' third trip to the Robotech or Macross well. Their original releases, the S-type Fokker and J-type Hunter, had exactly the same things in the box. You would find 6 Phoenix missiles, 2 Sidewinder missiles attached to a tree that you can attach a Phoenix missile to. There's 2 external fuel tanks, 2 exhaust nozzles with a reduced diameter. There's the authenticity card, and again, here we only have 300 units produced, unlike the 2,000 produced for the original S and J types. You also get 2 pilot figures, and they're sitting, and 2 standing pilot figures with a little metal ring that helps them stand inside a little baggie that's taped between the vertical stabilizers. On a tray underneath that, you'll find the display stand, which consists of a base and an arm and an adapter piece and a couple little screws, so some assembly is required. Taped to the tray underneath the display stand, you'll find instructions, which this time around have been updated to omit any references to things not actually in the box. Hopefully everyone watching this video subscribes to my channel and has seen my previous review that covered the S-type Fokker and the J-type Hunter versions. And if you did, you know that they were a little bit problematic. My S-type Fokker version has a gap right there that I wasn't too keen on. And one of the issues that we will see frequently with these models is that things come unpegged fairly easily. We'll just put that right back in. So that was an issue with my Fokker type. Otherwise, I was pretty happy with it as a model. My Hunter version had many more issues. It had the nose pitot tube here, popped off right away. And then we had this antenna on the back, came unseated. And then we had a rattle. I don't know if you could hear it. But there are 2 different die-cast pieces that this model is composed of, and so they are not solidly together on this version of the model. And all in all, my Hunter version was just problematic and required a lot of gluing to really get it to be the model it is now. Another issue that I saw with my Fokker type is that the air brake in the back, which we're going to explore a little further in a bit here, it isn't even, so one side comes up further than the other, so it's not symmetrical. So now when we get to the D-type, the question is Calibre Wings improving as a manufacturer? And I'm happy to report that I have almost no issues with my D-type. It's solid, there's no rattle anywhere. This is a nice tight seam in the back here. The butterfly brake is nicely seated evenly on both sides. All good there. So it's really a color difference, but it does seem like QC has improved, although I only get one sample, guys, so I can't really guarantee anything. The paint has obviously changed. Now it's a beige vehicle. And the other difference we get is the missiles. So instead of being white missiles, which wouldn't quite look as good on the all beige, we get gray missiles, which I thought was a really nice touch. There was one other thing that kind of popped up on the Hunter version, and that was smudges right here of some sort of like grease that was used in the manufacturing process. I didn't see that on my Fokker version, and I also do not see that on this version either. We have nice, smooth, opening, ratcheted wings, and no smudging going on there. So kudos there. Overall, much more pleasant experience, certainly than my Hunter version, and a little bit more pleasant than my Fokker version, which was already one of the better samples. So it does seem like Calibre Wings is moving in the right direction. Now, one problem that continues to really frustrate me are these missile attachments here. Not only do they pop off incredibly easily, as you're seeing, but they also break incredibly easily. Just putting that missile on can break them. And what it is there's two little tiny pieces of plastic here that hold the Sidewinder in place. And you can see there's a really funky angle that you've got to try to peg this thing in on. And if you try to apply too much pressure, your thumb will hit the Sidewinder and just break the Sidewinder off and that support that it's on. And this doesn't really attach firmly into place. So it's very easy that your thumb is going to get into that position and cause that damage to happen. So I really wish they had figured out a better way to attach the Sidewinder to this larger plastic piece, something a little more solid. But they didn't. So it's still going to be a problem going forward. So something to watch out for. The other things that I've had issues with as far as glue is concerned are the doors for the landing gear, which again, it's not been a problem on my trainer type, but it's something to certainly be aware of as you handle the toy. So I just thought I'd point that out now. Okay, now we're gonna dive into a review that will be very similar as I go over the features that were on these other toys. Nothing has changed. Still the exact same thing, just a different color scheme and a little bit better QC. Here's a quick scale and color test before we move into features. The Tomcat at 1/72 scale here, the Calibre Wings, is much larger than a 1/60 scale VF1. And that's correct. In the real world, a Tomcat would be a huge fighter plane in comparison to the VF1. I guess it's actually more accurate to say the VF1 is a very small fighter plane. Now I also have a Toonami 1/100 scale over here. It's just a little bit bigger than 15 centimeters long. The Calibre Wings 1/72 scale F-14 is pushing about 26 centimeters long if you ignore that pitot tube on the front. And the Yamato V2 is right in at 24 centimeters. Color-wise, you can see the Yamato V2 and the Calibre Wings very similar. The Toonami a little bit more yellow to the tone. The Calibre Wings vehicle is again a die-cast model. So this whole thing pretty much is die-cast. So that is one big difference between this model and toys. If I pick these up, incredibly light. If I pick up this thing, a ton of heft. All right, let's go look at those features. This model does come with standing pilot figures. They look like this, which is pretty nicely detailed. I could use a few more paint apps, but all things considered pretty good. There's a little metal plate that you can put their feet into, and once that happens, they should stand up, although it might be a little bit delicate, like so. We're going to begin our closer look at this model by flipping it over and checking out the weapons. Now, I've already mentioned these pylons on the side are awful. They barely plug in and they break very easily. Now, obviously, this part completely plastic, and it's really those areas that are plastic, and there are only a few of them, but they are the most problematic. So this is number one on the list. It's going to be very hard to plug it in, and it will break on you if you fight it at all. Moving on, we have these missiles, which attach very securely to the bottom of the vehicle, which is great to see. Unfortunately, they attach so securely that when you go to remove them, sometimes the anchor is going to stay in place while the missile pops off. And again, that's just, there's some glue applied at the factory. It has separated right there. I'm going to have to pry that off, just reapply some glue and solve the issue that way, but it's an issue that you should be aware of. Now, obviously you can pick and choose how you want your missile layout. On my S&J variants, I can pop off these runners that the missile attached to and just have kind of a flat bottom underneath. I can't really do that with my D variant. It seems like these runners are either glued on or maybe the paint application made them adhere, so they seem to be stuck on there pretty good. Now we do have landing gear, and I mentioned before that the landing gear door is another area that's plastic and you want to be careful of. Just don't accidentally apply pressure inward on these doors. Again, that's just glued together. That glue seems to be
fairly delicate. So if you apply a little pressure, you'll pop those doors off. Now we do get a piece with the model underneath the vehicle, and it looks like that and just plugs right into place. So if you're going to be putting it on the display stand, which we'll talk about in a bit, you just go ahead and remove that landing gear and put those bay doors on. Now same thing back here, we're just going to pull up, release that landing gear, and then we have parts that look like this that we could plug in. Now, one thing before I do that, a little gimmick to point out, we do have glove vanes, which I'm told is the proper terminology, that pops out from within. There we go. So there you go. That's a little gimmick that I failed to point out in my previous video. And you can obviously pop that out on both sides, and I believe that's for supersonic flight. I don't think it made it past the first version of the Tomcat, but that's a whole nother thing. So there you go. You got that gimmick, but we also have this cover here for the closed landing gear look. And it goes in there pretty securely. Let's see if I can fight it in there. All right. So there it goes. Now that's in there nice and tight. Now we do have these optional external fuel tanks, and these plug in pretty well on my D variant. It seems to be a little bit better than my previous versions. I'm not sure if there's anything that's actually done or if that's just random QC, but yeah, this is nice and snug. So we'll go ahead and pop this piece off by just barely touching it. Remove that landing gear door or landing gear there. Put on the landing gear door. Again, just like we did on the previous version, nice snug fit. So there you have your no landing gear look. Now another piece that we can swap out here, I've got the narrow diameter exhaust nozzles on there. You just pull away and we could plug in the more opened exhaust nozzles like so. All right, one more little durability issue. It was a problem on my Hunter vehicle, and apparently it's still a problem on my D version. This antenna here has popped free, so that's one more thing I'm going to have to glue back on. Now, I've also removed the ordnance because that little piece was annoying me, and now we can focus our attention on the back of the vehicle. Now, I've shown you the removable exhaust nozzles. We have horizontal stabilizers that pivot, which is cool. And then I've discussed briefly the air brake in the back. So you just kind of, it's a two-hand operation here. Might be best if you had a toothpick handy. You push down somewhere on it. That's going to allow you to lift up on the air brake. And there you go. It's nicely painted top and bottom. And you can kind of pull it up a little bit there. You can see there's nothing really that's going to hold it up in place. But if you try, you can get it to stay that way. And if we flip the toy over, we have these bottom ones, which we can get a toothpick in there. And again, red up above and down below. So that's nice. And then we have the arrestor hook in between, which does peg into place in that little hole right there. And then comes down like so, so you could simulate an aircraft landing. So that's it for the rear of the vehicle. Let's take a look at the front. Detail work is pretty nice on these models. These antennae are rubber, so you don't have to worry as you handle them about breaking them. This antennae that fell off, also rubber, which again, this is a big die cast piece. You have a rubber piece going into it that's held in there by glue. Probably explains why it pops free. The glue used, not necessarily the best. There's a nice little lens on this sensor array on the front, so that's pretty cool. You get that little green to the front of the canopy, and then the canopy itself opens up. There are removable pilot figures, or pilot and radar intercept officer figures. Both are the same, both look like this. Decently enough detailed. The cockpit itself, a little better detailed. You have nice painted on gauges, front and sides. And I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but there's even a little handle for the pilot. So that's cool. You can grab the stick. Well, not really because his hands are apart. Here is the display stand, minor assembly acquired. You're going to sink a screw through the base into the arm, both of those, our metal. There's a plastic clip up at the top. That is your adapter. And we're just going to take our model now, and we're going to slide it into that adapter piece like so. And it does a good job holding up that fairly heavy die-cast model like so. Now you can pivot it the other way. And that's about it. So it pivots. You're getting stability over optionality, really. A bit of a bummer on the back here. This attachment piece inhibits the air brakes and the arrestor hook. So if you're hoping to have a nice, sweet landing on the aircraft carrier pose, it's just not going to happen. Overall, a very attractive display piece. Most of it is solid metal, so that's good. Unfortunately, the pieces that are plastic definitely lack resilience. You should anticipate if you're buying this and you're going to handle it at all that you're going to have to touch up some glue. Not the end of the world. The only pieces that actually break are these pieces here, and you can glue them back together just like I have. Not the end of the world. Visit anymoon.com for my full article, like anymoon.com on Facebook, and thanks for watching.